All right, we're back on the conversation. I'm worried that one of the parties in this country is headed towards fascism. I wonder which one it is. Yes, it's the Republicans. And but there are specific reasons to be. It's not just name calling. And so what we want to do is bring on an expert to talk about actual specific things that we are worried about and what it could lead to. So Eric Ward's back with us. He's the executive director of the Western States Center and senior fellow with the Southern Poverty Law Center. Eric, welcome back.
Cenk, it's a pleasure to be with you today. Happy New Year.
You too, brother. All right, so Eric, I can give you dozens of examples, but I'll give you one from today. So a state legislator in Indiana upbraided someone in the school system for saying that, well, obviously we can teach that Nazism and fascism is bad. And he said, no, we don't want to make a value judgment on that. And I'm afraid that he's not being like a neutral fetishist, that especially given that we looked up his background and his with militias, et cetera, that the Republicans are warming the country up for fascism.
We are in a serious moment, and it is true we're seeing a number of signals, whether we want to call it fascism, whether we want to talk about authoritarianism. What we understand is that the Republican Party has been both captured and co-opted. And it is now a political party that seeks to overcome, overwhelm, and dismantle American democracy. It's quite serious about it, Cenk. Whether we're talking about the example you just gave, the recent news that the GOP is indicating to Deborah Lipstadt, who is being considered as the appointee to anti-Semitism in the Department of State, are now saying she will need to apologize for calling out statements made by a Republican senator that were deeply disturbing. We are seeing it from all facets of the Republican Party, but we're also seeing some resistance. Liz Cheney, regardless of where she and I may stand on specific issues, has been very clear that the Republican Party is in danger. And we should all heed those warnings, and including those of us who are progressives in the United States. What we are seeing 1 year after January 6th is both great resiliency to white nationalism, but also we are seeing some of the weaknesses, and democracy is still vulnerable.
Yeah, so look, if it was just anecdotal stuff like the one that I mentioned, you'd say, okay, well, that's one thing. But two, there's the talking points that now you could see in almost any right-wing dialogue about how America's not a democracy. They say, well, it's a republic and not a democracy. They never explain the difference. There is a slight difference, but they never explain it, nor do they even know it. What they're being warmed up for is democracy is not that as good as as it's been made out to be, right? And we're now covering Trump fans all over the country saying democracy is mob rule. I mean, there's great irony in that, Eric, because January 6th was the definition of mob rule.
That's right.
So when you see the rhetorical attack on democracy, and then you see a physical attack on democracy, you begin to worry about a pattern. And so what I'm worried about is, and I'm curious as to your take on this guy, I really genuinely don't know it, that the media, while saying, yeah, it's definitely true that Joe Biden won, it's and Trump saying he won is a lie, et cetera, they're clear on that, I give them credit on that. But when you say, hey, it looks like the Republicans are wholesale trying to attack democracy itself, I feel like the media then goes, whoa, that sounds like it's a bridge too far. Because it's in their DNA, it's in their every instinct that, no, I gotta call it even. I gotta call it even. So one, are you seeing that? And then two, let me ask you the obvious question of, is it even?
It's certainly not even. We have one party. We have a two-party system in the United States of America, and one party seeks to dismantle democracy. Let's be clear about something here, right? Democracy is the rules of governance upon which we make decisions in this country. A republic, right? A republican form of democracy is merely the process upon which we engage our democracy. We elect representatives. We also have direct democracy, ways we directly elect officials at the local and state level. This idea that the United States is a republic, right? This false distinction between republic and democracy that authoritarians and the insurgent right are peddling is historical revisionism. It is another form of a lie. There is no distinction in this country between American democracy and our Republican form of government. They are both valid, but one is being used to lie to the American public. Cenk, for the most part, the American public has rejected the big lie of the still the vote rhetoric that was put out there. But media still believes that this is some debate that is happening in American society. There is no debate around whether democracy is the system upon which we make decisions in this country. That was decided by the 1968 civil rights movement in this country. That debate is over. The media has to understand that this is not a political debate. This is an attack on American democracy. That is what we are witnessing. And people are caught up in it for many different ways and for many different reasons, but it is an attack.
Yeah. So look, let me be crystal clear. I think if Donald Trump gets reelected, we're done. I think our democracy is over. He is not going to just step out of office. We barely got him out of there last time. And he considered a military option, and his entire administration said they were going to resign. Next time, he'll fill it with complete lackeys, and they won't resign. And so we're toast if he wins again. So I'm not unclear about who the bad guys are. And I think that I'm worried the Democratic Party doesn't get it. They think that they're using it as like rhetoric to help them win the elections, but they don't actually believe it. They're wrong. They should believe it. It is an existential threat, and they're treating it like it's not a big deal. And so that leads me to turn my wrath against the Democrats, Eric, because how do I know that they're treating it like not a big deal? Well, they have a piece of legislation which originally was HR 1 for the People Act, which was terrific. And I almost never say that about Democratic legislation because usually it's filled with corporate pork, et cetera. But that was a great bill. And that's why I knew it had no chance of passing. And the Democrats claimed that they would pass it on day one and it would be incredibly easy. I thought they would strip out the anti-corruption parts. Now, of course that happened. There was no way they were gonna pass anti-corruption from a very corrupt Democratic Party. And obviously the Republican Party is 100% corrupt and would never consider it. But I thought they would at least pass the voting reform parts that were both critical to preserving democracy and yes, would actually help the Democratic Party because it would allow for more people to vote. And that is generally an advantage for Democrats. And it would end gerrymandering, which is a preposterous, nonsensical advantage for Republicans. But it appears the Democrats are that stupid. They still haven't passed it. And so let me ask a specific question here, Eric. Is it too late if they pass it now for it to end gerrymandering in the 2022 elections? Since the states have largely redistricted already, are the judges going to say the die is cast for this election?
Yeah, it's never too late to do the right thing. And look, let's be clear. Despite my criticisms of the Democratic Party, and there are many, I understand the position they are in. They have carried the ball on some very strong things. Biden's appointments of judges is significantly large. In Congress, the January 6th Congressional Investigative Committee is doing a very good job. right? The DOJ and the Department of Education have started to rein in those who think they can use our schools and our airports as the train of their culture war. But we really need the Democratic Party to carry the ball across the line. We need federal protection of voting rights, but we also need the protection of election workers who are being attacked and terrorized in this country. We all have to take this seriously, including those of us who are watching the show. It's all hands on deck. It's time for us to understand that we could end up in the same place we were in 2017. Authoritarianism is still at the door. We have to roll up our sleeves, and we all have to get to work. We have to make real the promises to the American people that we can run a stable democracy, that democracy works for everyone. But we don't get there if people don't even have the right to vote. And if we can't guarantee the integrity of that vote, it's a priority.
Yeah, we're screwed. Democrats are at best incompetent. And so they already blew the 2022 election. They're the world's biggest idiots. That's my opinion, not Eric's. Anyway, but I'm going to ask you about one other thing that's critical to democracy. So, look, we get the people who violently broke into the Capitol and they broke very specific laws, and it's easy to prosecute them. Even then, it's a bit of a struggle. But okay, that overall, I'm okay with how that's proceeding. But Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon are openly bragging about what they're calling the Green Bay sweep, which was the actual plan to steal the election, to throw it back to the states, have corrupt Republican legislators say, we don't give a damn who won, we're gonna declare Trump the winner. So that's a mortal threat to our democracy.
That's right.
But Eric, it's not clear what can be done about it, right? Because did they break an actual law? And if they didn't, do we just have to go, okay, I guess next time, maybe they'll do the coup attempt and it'll work?
Yeah, what we'll see quickly is that Bannon and Navarro will continue to try to find ways to manipulate the democratic process, right? That the process of democracy, not the political party. We have to be vigilant. But look, here's the important piece to remember really quickly. On January 6th, the evening, the alt-right threatened to hold marches and demonstrations across the country. Those faltered. But those rallies in support of democracy and voting rights outnumbered the alt-right around the country. There was mobilizations in towns around the community. The sin is the sin of despair. We can push back, but we all have to act, and we have to act now. And we can't wait and depend on just the Democratic Party. We need them as allies, but as community leaders, as progressives, we have to stand up for American democracy. And we do that from the local level, building up.
Yeah, and I do it by pushing the Democratic Party to stop being cowards and liars. And I don't do that out of hate. I do it because it's existential. You must fight the fascists, otherwise they're going to win. They're declaring over and over again. If they win again, they already have a plan to do a coup in case they ever lose an election. It doesn't get any clearer than this. And yet Pelosi and Biden, and this, I don't have to ask you this, and we're out of time anyway, but Eric, it's a fact. They're doing nothing. They're sitting there doing nothing. And so, ironically, the Republic is in danger. And there seems to be a lot of fiddling in Washington.
Inaction will kill democracy. We need our leaders to get outside of DC to see what's happening in this country, right? There are millions of Americans who are willing to use political violence, but there are also millions of Americans who are willing to roll up their sleeves and save democracy. But we need a partnership with the federal government. It cannot be a backpedaling in the fight for American democracy right now. It has to show up, must show up.
All right, I'll leave the audience with this last fact. American Enterprise Institute, which is a very conservative organization, presumably did not like the findings that they got in the study that they did, but they found that nearly 40% of Republicans agreed that, quote, if elected leaders will not protect America, the people must do it themselves, even if it requires violent actions. When somebody tells you who they are, believe them. 40% of Republicans are saying we are violent and we are ready to take that violence into action. And yet the Democrats stand idly by. All right, Eric Ward not doing that. He's fighting the good fight at the Southern Poverty Law Center. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Pleasure to be with you again.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.